G'day, how you doing? Adam Williams here from Easy Way Photography. Here we are at Camel Rock in southern New South Wales, down near a little town called Bermagui. Probably one of the most spectacular seascape locations in the world, and definitely one of the most spectacular in Australia. I'm not really here to shoot because I've shot from this exact location, pretty much this exact composition here before. I've got the camera there, it's really just a prop. What I want to talk about is the significance that this location has on my photography career and my life in general. Now I want to ask you a question. How many photographers out there that are watching this video want your imagery to stand out, want your photography to be unique? I bet that's the majority, right? Now, these days, everyone's walking around, they've got an iPhone in their pocket, and the playing field these days is essentially social media, Facebook, Instagram and the like, and really, those little tiny images that we're looking on our phone, our mobile phone cameras are more than capable at capturing images of resolution to compete with and grab likes and love on social media these days. So one of the hardest ways I think to stand out would be to run around and do exactly what everyone else is doing. And it's this location here, Camel Rock, where I first had the thought, you know what, I want my imagery to stand out. I want it to be moody, I want it to be emotive, and I want it to be as unique as possible. And as I said, it was this location where that happened, or more so when I came back to process this image. This was the very first image that I consciously processed using the influence of my living with anxiety and depression. So the finished image of Camel Rock that I produced is very dark. It's got a real heavy sky, not unlike today in fact, a real heavy overcast sky. All these dark, black, charcoaly rocks that I darkened down to give it that really black fog, Depression is often called the black fog, and this particular image that I produced is called Even the Darkest Days, but in the early days of the processing of this image, I was calling it the black fog because it had that beautiful charcoaly black fog. There's a couple of little leading lines drawing us back in through the middle here. And then in the background, we got that dark, heavy, dramatic sky representing, the heaviness of depression. We've got Camel Rock isolated in the middle, representing that loneliness and isolation that you feel when you have depression. We've also got a ray of hope. There's a ray of light coming down, shining on Camel Rock, which signifies the breaking of the storms. And as we go through the series that is now called Even the Darkest Days that I've produced, which is inspired by, as I said, my anxiety and depression, as we run through, I'll show you a few on the presentation now, as we run through those images, you'll see they start off very, very dark with only a slight ray of light. One of them doesn't even have a ray of light. It's called The Darkest Day. But they start off very dark, but as we've progressed through that series, the light is starting to open up, the storms are breaking. One of my images has a rainbow, and rainbows signify the breaking of the storm. And a lot of the more recent images in that series have a flood of golden light. The light is now pouring in. The dark clouds are still back there, they're still there. I'll forever live with anxiety and depression, I'm sure of that, but I'm better managing that. Hence why you're now seeing a flood of light, a rainbow, but the clouds are still there, just to suggest that that was there. I'm still living with that. They were darker in the past. There were much darker times in the past. But now times are I'm dealing with it, I'm managing that anxiety and depression much, much better. And you can see the flood of light now entering that series. Now, on anxiety and depression and photography or art in general, not only did my anxiety and depression heavily influence this series, which really catapulted my photography, in my opinion, to that level I was striving for of emotive, unique, personal imagery, I suppose, all coming from inside here. But not only that, and I didn't really think about this at the time, but I found out that art is extremely helpful in the healing process of my anxiety and depression, because back 4 or 5, 6 years ago, I wasn't able to talk about having anxiety or depression. And what I was able to do, I was able to then channel that and put it into my creating of these images, and thereby I was getting it off my chest, even though no one really knew why I was creating this dark series of imagery. I was still getting it out there and getting it off my chest, and eventually I started mentioning to a few people that this series was inspired by or created with my anxiety and those dark days in mind. And of course, now that I'm teaching and presenting, I talk about it a lot, and it just keeps that healing process, you know, going and going by talking to other people with anxiety and depression, talking to my friends and family about that. And look, I know how difficult it can be living with anxiety and depression day in, day out. But for me, and I'm not sure if this will work for everyone, but it's worth a try. For me, by communicating and putting it out there through my art, by getting it off my chest and putting it into my photography, it really helped the healing process a whole lot. And at the same time, I was able to start creating this more personal, more emotive, more moody style of imagery, which then made, I suppose, my imagery a little bit more unique, a little bit more different from what a lot of the other photographers out there were doing. Now, look, I'm completely okay with everyone that just wants to capture reality the way it is, but I suppose, well, I don't suppose, I know for sure the majority of my images don't represent reality, but they represent, you know, this truth inside of me. So it's very, very real to me what my images represent. They just don't happen to look like reality. So I hope that gives you a little bit more of an understanding about where I'm coming from with my imagery. And if this video happens to help someone with anxiety or depression, maybe pick up a camera or start getting real creative and begin that healing process through art, then I've succeeded. Absolutely, I couldn't be happier. Thanks again for watching along. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.